Where are we on the battlefield? We were right in front of the Eternal Light and Peace Memorial here on Oak Hill, which overlooks the field that we know here at Gettysburg as Iversons Pits. Who was fighting here? Iversons Brigade of North Carolinians fighting for the Army of Northern Virginia versus Henry Baxter's Union Brigade of the 1st Corps. Iverson's men would advance in the field just behind me there towards the ridge line full of monuments. They did so on the order of their division commander, Robert Rhodes. Rhodes, who arrived here with the rest of his division around noon on July 1st, is going to notice that he is on the edge of the Union line, that he's in essence flanking them, putting them into a vulnerable position. He also notices that on the plains north of town, Union reinforcements are coming forward from the town itself, potentially to link up with those Union forces on the ridge behind me. So Rhodes hastily orders an attack, thinking that those Union forces would link up. Iverson's men went forward under the assumption that the ridge directly behind me was unoccupied. Who was Alfred Iverson? Alfred Iverson Jr., because whenever I hear Jr., I have to do Sean Connery voice from Indiana Jones. Jr. Alfred Iverson Jr. was born in Georgia to influential politician and judge Alfred Iverson. Alfred Iverson is very well connected, his father. And so Alfred Iverson Jr., when the Mexican-American War starts, signs up to fight for the Georgia Volunteers. He's going to rise to the rank of lieutenant and stay in the Army after the war, serving in multiple cavalry posts throughout the antebellum period. When the war starts, he is going to resign his commission in the United States Army, and he is going to go and raise the 20th North Carolina. Let's push pause on that for a moment. Think about this. A man from Georgia is now going to raise a regiment in North Carolina. That's going to cause some problems later. He will lead the 20th North Carolina at a battle called Gaines' Mill in 1862, where he will lead from the front, and while doing so, while attacking a Union artillery battery, he will be severely wounded. That will be, according to sources, the last time Alfred Iverson will lead from the front of his men, which again, pushing pause again, is going to cause some problems for him later. Now here comes the third thing that's bad for Iverson. During the Maryland campaign, he comes back in command of his regiment, and in command of his regiment, his brigade commander is killed at the Battle of South Mountain. Duncan McCrae of the 5th North Carolina then takes over the brigade for the Battle of Antietam. McCrae is a North Carolinian. So the men for the North State are like, we like this guy. But when the battle ends, Iverson has distinguished himself during Antietam, and reports go back that maybe he deserves to be promoted. So Iverson is promoted at 34 years of age, a Georgian commanding a North Carolina brigade. McCrae, disgusted that he has been passed over for promotion, will go back to North Carolina, resign his commission, and start becoming a newspaper editor. That's going to cause problem for Iverson later on down the road. Having a guy who buys ink by the barrel not liking you, and then something like this happens at Gettysburg, yeah, that's setting up the foundation for having your reputation get absolutely destroyed. Iverson is assumed at this battle when he sends his men forward. Almost immediately what happens here, and just the disaster that befalls his brigade. If you come out here and see the tablet, you can see just how bad it was for his brigade in this action. Based on that, people start asking why, only to find out that Iverson had not led his brigade forward that day. His enemies start to pile on him and say he was drunk behind the lines. He was hiding behind a log. The thing is this. A brigade commander shouldn't always be at the head of his brigade. Not everyone's Louis Armistead sticking their hat on their sword and moving forward. A brigade commander has to be in charge of as many as 5 to 6 regiments. They can't always be leading from just one. Sometimes they have to be behind coordinating them all. So here at Gettysburg, plenty of brigade commanders don't lead from the front on both the north and the south. And while this might sound like a defense of Iverson, the reality here is that the narratives that were crafted about him after the war or after this action at Gettysburg are going to paint him very close to being a coward. To me, that's an accusation that's unfair. He's acting as a brigade commander. He rushed his brigade into action, didn't go in with him, and as is often the case here with the Battle of Gettysburg, what happens at Gettysburg will define you for the rest of your life. Who were facing Iverson's men that day? That was Baxter's Federal Brigade of the 1st Corps, 2nd Division, John C. Robinson commanding. Baxter's Brigade, it did not appear initially to the Confederates on Oak Hill, was here. In fact, where we're standing, it appeared to be vacant. But sight from up there can be deceiving, because on the reverse slope of this ridge was Baxter's Brigade. Iverson's men go forward under the assumption that the only Federals they can see are in the Sheeds Woods. And so they're coming in on the flank of the Federal position. But they do not know that there's a whole fresh line of Federal infantry waiting behind a stone wall to give them a nasty surprise. Iverson's Brigade is going to be approaching from the direction of the Eternal Peacelight Memorial. Now they'll traverse the 40 farm, which was standing here at the time. It's not standing here now because the National Park Service in the 1930s tore it down for the dedication of the Eternal Peacelight Memorial. So there you go. Look at that. A little park history there, Okay. Iverson's Brigade, however, is going to make this field famous, not the Forney Farm. That brigade of 4 North Carolina regiments are going to be hastily thrown into the advance. How we know this is because they are not given the time, or they don't give a clear explanation of why they do not advance skirmishers ahead of their advance. And that's going to cause a problem. Those 4 regiments are going to come across this field, head towards where I am at right now. And as they advance towards the crest of the ridge, which you can't really see, but trust me, there's a crest of the ridge back there somewhere beyond this corn, that's when Baxter's Brigade will rise up from behind a stone wall and deliver a withering fire. In an instant, the 5th, 20th, and 23rd North Carolina regiments are going to melt away. On their brigade tablet, it says they would suffer 130 killed here at the Battle of Gettysburg. An artillerist, a Confederate artillerist up on Oak Hill, will comment that he saw a line of 73 dead Confederates in a row. 3 had fallen forward, the rest had fallen backward, but all their feet were like in perfect parade order. Where are Iversons Pits? Well, based on evidence, I think Iversons Pits, the very edge, is right over here, next to this cornfield. The pits would extend into where the cornfield is right now. Why I think that is based on the 1864 Elliott burial map, which showed the burial locations of both the Union and Confederate dead here at Gettysburg. Here, in this field, named for Iverson because his men had fallen in great quantity here, a lot of men lost their lives that day in an instant. Was it a failure of leadership? Yeah. Mostly because Iverson didn't deploy skirmishers, and his men were made vulnerable. But did Iverson give a bad rap for this, what happened here? Absolutely he did. And his reputation was destroyed. Was this the end for Iverson? No. His connections would continue to serve him. He would go on to command Nichols' brigade in the Army of Northern Virginia for a short time. And then he would go down to Georgia and serve well in Confederate cavalry unit under Joseph Wheeler. Even so, what you do here at Gettysburg will often define your life. And what his men wrote about him and what his opponents wrote about him would continue to echo on in further generations. Like, do.
Ease his pain.
Ease his pain.
Ease his pain.